every now and then I'm exposed to an idea or a piece of information and it changes everything. When I was studying microbiology, I was exposed to the amazing fact that there are more bacterial cells in my body than there are human cells, and that the viral ones outnumber even the bacterial ones. This was so amazing for me because what it means is that fundamentally, biologically, compositionally, I am more other than I am me. Now, when we think about this fact, when we explore it, when we consider the fact that we are quite literally infested with bacteria and viruses and other microscopic life forms, our immediate response is to recoil and feel disgusted, that maybe this is why we get sick, when in fact this is seldom the case. Instead, these tiny little tenants that we're playing host to are responsible for maintaining a whole variety of different microclimates and environments that exist within and throughout our bodies. They are protecting the skin and the respiratory tract by delegating and using resources that other disease-causing microorganisms would need to propagate and thrive. They're maintaining the careful pH balance of the urogenital tract. They're fermenting indigestible food matter into nutrients that make us happy and healthy. And in fact, a whole lot of amazing new research indicates that the trillions of bacteria that live in our gut don't just help to break down our food. They communicate directly with our brains, which means that they're not just affecting what we do physically, they're changing and affecting how we think and how we feel. And in fact, it's only really when these microorganisms shift out of balance with us, and conversely, us with them, that illness and disease can and does, in fact, arise. Now, one of the other ideas that I really enjoy playing with, almost as an add-on to this idea, is a shift, a mental shift away from an idea that's been ingrained in us for a long time, and it's the idea that life is fundamentally competitive. And instead, I've chosen to embrace the understanding that life is by its nature fundamentally cooperative. The notion of selfish individualism, of competing for, collecting and hoarding resources, is, I believe, one of the fundamentals of disease. And we see this practically in a cancer cell, which decides to consume, to use, to take without regard for the whole, not realizing that without the whole, it itself ceases to exist. What this means to me, this little add-on, is that you've never been an individual fighting in order to survive. You are, and you always have been, a community cooperating in order to thrive. Lately, I've been exploring fermentation and sprouting as a means of creating food that is dense with life. And one of these explorations has been growing a SCOBY, a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast used to make kombucha. The bacteria and yeast band together to form a single composite structure. And when you take this structure and you place it in tea with a food source, something as simple as sugar, it is then able to produce an absolute abundance of vitamins and minerals and probiotics. And I think that this is so amazing because these tiny little individuals within the structure of the SCOBY are able to produce something that is so far beyond the scope of their individual talents and processing capacities, and so far beyond the raw materials that they're given to work with. Together they can create what is effectively a superfood. Now, I believe that the value of any idea is not in its literal interpretation, but in its symbolic application. In other words, it's not in 1 + 1 = 2, but in critically exploring what that means to us and how it metaphorically affects us. This idea of the composite species, the composite being, has very enriching microcosmic implications, which we've explored. But I think that it also has amazing macrocosmic implications, and I'd love to share one of them with you today. So I see humanity as the microbial community of planet Earth. You know, we exist in all of these diverse microenvironments and climates. We do things, we get things done. But our belief of ourselves as separate, competing individuals, an idea that is fundamentally false because of our composite biological nature, has created a sort of disease of our planet, and we are making our host organisms sick. So much so that I think many people, I'd wager to say most people, are afraid for the future, and we're deeply concerned about the quality of life that we and future generations will be able to experience and enjoy on this planet. One of the amazing macrocosmic implications of this idea of the composite being is that I believe that it provides a blueprint for us to create a better and brighter future. Spiritual explorer and developmental biologist Dr. Bruce Lipton says that the next logical step in our evolution as a species is to become the super-organism of humanity, wherein every single human being is acting as a cell comprising a larger composite whole. I love this idea, the idea of the super-organism of humanity. It resonates with me down to the bone. If we could begin to conceptualize, to contextualize ourselves, and to actualize ourselves as members of a larger composite whole, together we could metaphorically turn Earth into a single living entity. And I find this idea so freeing. I find it so empowering, as counterintuitive as it is to suggest that surrendering your isolated personal meaning to something larger would be empowering. I really do find that it is. If we think about a bone cell is a bone cell is a bone cell, you know, just as a skin cell is a skin cell, a nerve cell is a nerve cell. They have their own individual functions, they have their own individual meanings. But when we take that bone cell, that skin cell, that nerve cell, and place it inside a larger whole, say for example a human being, all of a sudden that isolated personal meaning has context, and that creates a richness of meaning. It creates life, it creates consciousness. And whereas before we had a bone cell, now we have a conscious being able to ponder its surroundings, able to develop an understanding of the universe that it lives in, able to perceive itself, and able to be aware of the fact that it is perceiving itself. Placing individual identity inside a larger composite whole gives richness and meaning to that identity that cannot possibly be achieved or perceived alone. So how then do we become the superorganism of humanity? And I think about this a lot. I would say that it probably takes up most of my time thinking about how we can implement this. And I believe that paradoxically, it takes us developing ourselves into the best versions of ourselves, the version of us that is the most joyful, the most inspired, and then directing those efforts, that self-development, toward a greater composite whole. A bone cell never tries to be a skin cell, even though it has the entire genetic repertoire to do so, and even if the skin is unhealthy, because it understands that how it best contributes to the whole is to be a healthy bone cell. And I feel the same is intuitively true for humanity. I think when you find your personal sweet spot, when you find that space and that state where everything in you is singing in ecstatic rhapsody, you better enable your community to find their bliss. And I think that this is how paradise is made. I truly believe that this is how paradise is made, with the individual giving, receiving, acting, living, breathing for the composite, for the whole. And when that happens, the things that we will be able to experience, the things we will be able to achieve, the things that we will be able to understand will be beyond the musings of even the wildest imagination.